All right, do we have communications with Carson City?
Good morning, Governor. We're ready in the north.
Is Mr. Aguilar there?
No, sir.
All right, we'll get started.
Oh, he says no, he's on an airplane. Yeah, he's unavailable today.
Okay. All right, let me call to order the meeting of the Board of State Prison Commissioners scheduled for today, is it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023 at 10 a.m. And we'll move into the agenda. Can I have the clerk please call the roll?
Governor Lombardo.
Present.
Attorney General Ford.
Here.
Secretary of State Aguilar. Governor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll move on to agenda item number 2, the opportunity for public comment. This is the first period. No vote or action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda unless the matter is specifically posted on the agenda and as an item upon which action may be taken. The Board of Commissioners will impose a time limit of 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment there in Carson City? Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S, and I have a loved one incarcerated in the Nevada Department of Corrections. I'm also an activist and board member of Return Strong. I'm reading a statement that was worked on by a team of people who have loved ones incarcerated here, but they live outside of Nevada and are not allowed to call in to give comment. So I'm here to represent our families and Return Strong members inside Nevada prisons. Our concerns today center around the inappropriate or total lack of medical care that incarcerated persons receive while in the care and custody of NDOC. Return Strong conducted a medical survey with over 100 respondents from 2021 to 2023. From the results of the survey, we have selected 3 major points of concern. 1, prescription medications. Providers must prescribe appropriate medications and dosages based on the needs of their patients. We find this is often not the case. Medications for chronic conditions are often not provided even if they come into prison with that medication. The NDOC medical staff or doctor will change prescriptions given by hospital doctors or other outside specialists, or they simply do not allow them at all. During the 2023 legislative session, the issue was addressed through AB 121, yet is still causing issues around the timely refill of prescriptions. The legislation was intended to end the kite process and ensure the medical providers were ensuring the prescriptions were refilled without causing gaps without treatment. Facilities are still not requiring kites to get refills, leaving people without life-sustaining medications. Number 2. Length of time to see a doctor. Medical kites are often ignored. Individuals must see a doctor to get refills of needed medication. It takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get a doctor appointment. Meanwhile, people are going without their medication for chronic conditions. Some who submitted kites for an emergency visit were told their condition was not an emergency. This includes one who had an abscessed tooth, another individual had a heart condition and had to be hospitalized 3 times because he never got to see a doctor, while the recently passed SB 416 eliminates medical copays and alleviates the financial burden of receiving medical treatment. It seems that the ability to actually get seen by a doctor remains a huge barrier to anyone receiving timely and proper medical care. 3, NDOC does not follow treatment plans prescribed by outside specialists. At least 14 survey respondents indicated that a provider outside of NDOC refused to treat them due to their incarceration. Outside doctors are terminating their contracts with NDOC due to NDOC's repeat failures to follow medical orders. It is our most sincere request that the new medical director will consider these concerns as well as many others revealed by the Return Strong survey. As stated in the survey report, implementing health, promoting procedures and processes that focus on the most cost and life-saving method in the long run, prevention, would benefit both NDOC and the individuals in their custody. Given the long-term effect that medical neglect has on our loved ones and the expense it puts on taxpayers, preventative care would be much more cost-effective than the high cost of extreme sick care. While we understand the difficulties due to the staffing
You've reached 3 minutes.
Thank you.
public comment there in Carson City?
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Gutierrez, last name Gutierrez. I'm here today to advocate for those whose voices are not heard beyond the prison walls. Within NDOC, as we all know, there are many issues, one of which hits very close to home for me: the food that our loved ones are served, or therefore the lack of. My husband has been incarcerated for the past 2 years. Within that time, the food has significantly decreased in quality and quantity. Some days they are given rotten fruit, spoiled milk, or condiments on their trays as a substitute to their main course. My husband was recently transferred to a conservation camp. He called me on several occasions telling me that the food was so bad that they couldn't even eat it, or it was making several offenders sick. The milk was spoiled to the point that it was curdled. Even after trying several cartons, they were all the same. When they spoke to the COs, they just stated that they should be fine because they just had barely gotten the shipment. At one point, my husband called me extremely upset. For breakfast, they had gotten tater tots, a side of ketchup, and tartar sauce. That's it. Grown men were served this, men that were getting ready to head out for a full day's work, and not easy work, labor-intensive work. A child wouldn't even get full off of a tray like this, and even being in a conservation camp where the calorie count is supposed to be higher since they do such labor-intensive work, is not even feeding them an adequate amount of food. I asked my husband what they were supposed to be served based on the menu they have posted on the wall. He laughed and stated, "They rarely serve or even have items available to make what's on the menu. Who controls this and follows through with these things so that what's on the menu is actually what is served? Why make a menu if it's only full of hopes and dreams for the offenders reading it?" I work 2 jobs to be able to support our family and to also be able to put money on my husband's books so he can buy commissary to make up for the lack of food he isn't getting from NDOC. It's a terrible feeling to hear that the person you love is hungry, that they wake up hungry, they go to work hungry, they go to sleep hungry, or that they had to eat rotten or spoiled food because it was all that was available. Some offenders are fortunate enough to have extra money to purchase commissary to make up for the lack of food, but there are so many offenders at NDOC that don't have anyone to help them. Lack of food affects your mental state, your mood, your energy levels, and overall your well-being. Where do we draw the line? I thought being in prison meant that you lose your freedom, not that you lose your humanity and your dignity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Karen Gedney, Gedney. I was the senior physician for the Department of Corrections from 1987 to 2016, and my comments will be related to the diet on the agenda that you have. I had a unique, let's say, experience to watch the impact of food, diet, on the medical conditions of the inmate population because I had to actually take care of those conditions. And what I want to bring up is basically a story about how it can improve. And I saw different approaches over the years. One of the greatest approaches was the Culinary Arts Program at Northern Nevada Correctional Center, where a warden who was progressive saw that food was a major issue in a prison. Also, that many inmates in no way wanted to work in the culinary because, well, it was a sort of miserable job. And what this warden realized was if we have a culinary arts program where they're invested in getting a sous chef type of certification license, and I hire the right employee to run the culinary, then we can really improve the food situation, because I realize that working in a system, you only have so much money, so much talent, and it makes sense if you make the most of it. And that's what I just wanted to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor, that's it for public comment in Carson City.
Thank you. Do we have public comment here in Las Vegas? They're probably right there at the end of the table would be best.
Hello, my name is Pamela Browning, BROWNING. I am with Return Strong, and I'm here today to talk about hunger. On a daily basis, our loved ones at NDOC facilities are experiencing hunger. The amount of food given in the chow hall is not even enough for a child, let alone a full-grown adult. Yes, they have access to store, but often they are limited to how much they can spend, and on top of that, usually receive less than half of what they ordered. Don't get me started on how much everything costs. A lot of incarcerated population doesn't have anyone on the outside to help them with packages or store, so they are left feeling hungry. How does one supplement what they are not getting from the chow hall? One of our incarcerated members at Ely State Prison says, I have eaten toothpaste and Tums and acids, or even salt for hunger pains. It helps for a little bit. Another says, I ate toilet paper and drank hot water. Please tell me how this is humane. I have heard the term, have you heard the term hangry? Hangry is what happens when you haven't eaten. You get cranky and irritable when you haven't eaten, right? Imagine having the luxury of not having the luxury of grabbing a Snickers or anything else, really. How do you expect to feed people minimal amounts of food that really isn't fit for human consumption? I have heard many times how the food was rotten and moldy, or there was fat pieces. An incarcerated member tells us, I've gotten sick from eating meat that was either undercooked or bad. Medical assistance is hard to get at HDSP unless you're extremely sick or near death. Often our loved ones are left with the decision to eat something bad and get sick, or don't eat at all and get sick. Nobody should have to go hungry. The fact is that if our approach to tough on crime is focused on putting people in prison, then using prison to heal physically, mentally, emotionally should be a part of our tough on crime approach. Be tough on the change that needs to happen to create the world that no longer needs prison. And in the meantime, please feed our loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Crystal Voigt, last name V as in Victor, O-I-G-H-T. I'm a member of Return Strong, and I have a loved one that's incarcerated at High Desert State Prison. I am part of a work group that's working on identifying issues around food insecurity in prisons, and specifically here in Nevada, and trying to understand those issues from both an analysis side and by studying research around the issues of food insecurity and from a humanitarian perspective, in order to get a better understanding of the experience of incarcerated people. So according to studies, people incarcerated at various facilities are not receiving enough food to satisfy their hunger. The food served on the trays often deviates from the menu, with missing items being substituted with items such as syrup packets. In some facilities, the bread is moldy, rotten, the potatoes are uncooked and raw, and sometimes not edible. Additionally, there are no fresh fruits, or there are no fresh vegetables, only black and rotten ones. Fresh fruits are either not ripe or overripe. To alleviate their hunger, some inmates have resorted to eating non-item foods such as toothpaste tacos, which involves wrapping toothpaste inside of toilet paper. Others consume Tums, diet pills, or salt packets. Or some save their meals throughout the day so they can eat. Many people report constantly thinking about food and how they can obtain it. This obsession has affected their mental health, causing aggression, mood swings, and other issues. The lack of adequate food has also caused foodborne illnesses such as vomiting, diarrhea, sweating, and dizziness. While some others have received medical attention for salmonella poisoning, most have not, as it takes too long to seek medical treatment. People who have been incarcerated for 15 to 40 years have noticed a decline in the quality and quantity of food. The meals are served by guards, porters, inmates, and caseworkers. But at High Desert State Prison, there are issues with the general population serving food to the protective custody units, which has resulted in food being tampered with, food poisoning, and some have reported filing grievances. However, majority of them don't, in fear of they're going to be retaliated against. There are three main issues happening here surrounding food. First, chronic hunger among inmates. Second, low-grade food, not fit for human consumption. Deviation from the approved posted menus with low substitute qualities. It is our understanding there are some proposals being brought to the table today to address these issues, but our concern is those solutions, while they might provide a temporary solution or Band-Aid, ultimately it's a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. The pressure point becomes not only what can we do now to limit the bleeding while we work towards long-term solutions, but how do we actually provide a nutritional a nutritional long-term value plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Silva, SILVA, and I'm a volunteer with Return Strong. It's well known and documented that hunger is directly linked to mental health, anger, and aggression. Think about the last time you were really hungry, or better yet, think about the last time your spouse or loved one was very hungry, to the point they were hangry. You know that point of hunger where you're so hungry that you become angry? This is the These are a few of the hundreds of stories from High Desert State Prison that echo the same thing throughout NDOC facilities. First, hunger determines how I sleep and makes a huge part of me being active physically. If I get food, I work out and do activities and draw. If I'm hungry, I can't sleep and I don't want to work out because it'll get worse. Of course, it's a mental health thing, and over the smallest food dispute, there could be major issues. Have you seen fights over less than $3 in food? It's normal in prison. It's not about an inmate violent outburst. We're all hungry, pissed off, and can't do anything to improve our situation. 2, hunger causes me to lose sleep many nights, causes me to stress out, causing my mental health to decrease. Also, being hungry causes me to lash out and become angered with loved ones. Having no food makes me lose focus and have a lack of physical energy. 3, it's hard to sleep when your stomach is rumbling. I fixate on food, especially watching others get store, and I'm hungry. Aggressiveness comes into play, trying to get others to share their food or give me extra state food. If you don't have food, you don't want to work out and burn those calories because you have no way of replacing them, so you stay stagnant to not be so hungry later. 4, my hunger has a negative impact on every aspect of my life. Most people here seem to exist primarily to survive between meals. Moods and mental health are bad. Activity level is low. Begging for food is pervasive. People generally behave like feral animals. Many inmates barter sex for food. 5, lack of food. Lack of any decent food has a seriously negative effect on much of the population here. Obsessive hoarding and constant focus on meals dominate the conversations. People will beg for any scraps and debase themselves doing so. The idea that when people are treated like animals, they act like animals is very real. Incarcerated individuals are not being fed proper nutrition. They're slowly being starved. This has lifelong effects on individuals. It's up to us to make a change. These are human beings and should be treated as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Chris Covello, Kovello. I'm an advocate with Return Strong. I'm also an instructor at Hope for Prisoners for the recently released for those at Casa Grande. So my son was incarcerated in NDOC. A year ago, I stood here and gave most of the same public comment. A year later, we are here with a new governor, a new director, and the same problems. I understand change takes time, but we're running out of time. In the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, a family travels to California during the Great Depression to look for work. When the family obtains a job picking peaches, the mother goes to the company store to buy food for their dinner, which is owned and operated by the farming operation. She finds that the prices are overpriced, but there are no other options if they want to eat. There are no other shops, and she's forced to use their meager wages to purchase food from the company store at inflated prices. John Steinbeck wrote this novel in 1939, 83 years ago. Today, in 2023, I stand in front of you as a real-life mother who has unlimited love in my heart for my family and just wants to see that their needs are met. Much like the mother in The Grapes of Wrath, I have limited income and only one place to shop, the offender store, also known as a commissary. I was sickened to learn that a recent audit of NDOC's fiscal processes outlined that over the course of a year, commissary prices netted the department over $5 million in profit. This is profit off the backs of our already struggling Nevada families. I'm helping care for my grandchildren, who are now part of the statistic of children in the U.S. with incarcerated parents. Children with one parent incarcerated are more likely to have long-term physical and mental health concerns, lower lifetime earnings, and unstable living conditions. Your increase in prices and the commissions that NDOC are receiving not only affect me, but also my grandchildren. It's no secret that the meals in the NDOC system are historically low nutritional value and in portion size. During lockdowns or period of inadequate staffing, meals are sometimes not even served. Food purchased from the commissary is often the only supplemental nutrition that incarcerated individuals have access to. Have you ever received a letter from one of your children describing hunger pains and what it's like to go to bed hungry? Imagine deciding to choose between supplementing nutrition and basic needs for your son or buying diapers and nutritional food for your grandchildren at home. I do this all the time. Not only are families bearing the financial and emotional burden of supplying food to their loved ones, but also basic necessities that NDOC has deemed as a luxury. Inmates are given 1 roll of toilet paper per week. Is using more than 1 roll of toilet paper really a luxury? Aren't shower sandals a necessity for health reasons? Basic necessities are not luxuries. They're part of the 8th Amendment that requires prison officials
You've
to
reached 3 minutes.
adhere to evolving standards. Thank you very much. I would like to finish on the second period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mariana Espinoza, Espinoza. I am a volunteer with Return Strong. I have a husband and a son incarcerated at High Desert State Prison. I have a younger son who was recently released from Wells Conservation Camp. And I am here today to bring to light a few issues that have me concerned for my loved ones out. First, I would like to talk about the food portions and quality of being served. My youngest son worked in the kitchen. While he was working in the kitchen, he came across the boxes the food comes in. They were marked not for human consumption. I feel that's wrong. If we're gonna be having our people incarcerated, you need to feed them food. That is for human consumption. They're not animals. Like somebody said, you treat you like animals, they're gonna act like animals. I'm sorry. Okay, when he asked why they were serving the food, he was told to not pay attention to that. Our loved ones are human beings and deserve to be fed human food. Then there's the portions that they are given that is not sufficient for a grown man. My 7-year-old receives more food at school than my loved ones get incarcerated. My loved ones are constantly going hungry because I am unable to put money on their accounts for them to order commissary food. My loved ones used to take multivitamins when they were out here to get the vitamins and nutrients they needed. Since they've been incarcerated, they're unable to get that nutrients and their vitamins necessary. My youngest son that was released in July recently ended up in the emergency room. The doctors told him that the swelling to his legs and his feet were due to the poor diet he had the 6 years he was incarcerated. He's out having normal proportions, but it's hurting his health. And I feel that's really wrong. I can't afford to send money to my loved ones for them to have accurate food portions. You know, I understand they're incarcerated, but just because they're incarcerated doesn't mean that they're dehumanized, that they're treated like animals. That hurts me to my soul. So I'm a single parent. I take care of my elderly mother, so I can't afford things for them to eat. So I feel that the state needs to do something about their food quality and the portions they're served. The food problems are causing serious health conditions, not only for my loved ones, but all the inmates incarcerated. This is not only a problem for us, but also NDOC because of the medical conditions caused by lack of nutrition will increase medical costs for NDOC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Jeanette Savon Ford. I'm a psychiatric nurse here in Southern Nevada, and I've come to speak on behalf of my loved ones and others incarcerated with
Can you do me a favor and spell your last name? I missed it.
Savon Fore, it's SIVON-FORE.
Thank you.
Okay. So I would like the Department of Corrections to recall their mission statement. And it is the mission of the Nevada Department of Corrections to protect society by maintaining offenders in a safe and humane conditions while preparing them for successful reentry back into society. We operate as one team, proud of our reputation as leaders in corrections. Our staff will utilize innovative programming that will focus on education, mental health, substance abuse treatment, and vocational training as a cornerstone to offenders' rehabilitation. What was left out there was medical. The mission of the medical division of the Nevada Department of Corrections states that they are committed to providing quality, evidence-based health care using an efficient system of managed care that is professional, humane, and appropriate, and is supportive of the overall mission of the Nevada Department of Corrections. And my experience with just my loved one is over the last few years now, mind you, we did have a pandemic, is that he started having issues with his dental. We are now like 6 years into it. He just received one partial fitting that fit and the bottoms did not work. The first time they came broken. So this is now 6 years, 7 years trying to get teeth. Medical, he had a collis fracture in 2020. It was recommended that he go out and see a surgeon. He was sent back to the prison to heal. So that has caused neurological damage in his wrist. Now, I know of other offenders that also don't get adequate medical care timely. And they have to send kites to get any kind of medications that a doctor orders when they come in. It takes 2 to 3 months to get medications. And then they will send multiple kites before they actually get them as KOPs. That also affects us as a state when they are released because all these medical problems will have to be cared for later by our state. And in my job, I also get to deal with people's mental health when they come out. And some of these are very compounding issues. My husband has been incarcerated for almost 30 years, and we've seen a decline. And I understand as a state employee, resources are our biggest lack. We want to provide these things, but if we are not looking for ways to fund and find resources to care for our population, this is still a vulnerable population. They still deserve care.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Patricia Adkisson, A-D-K-I-S-S-O-N. My comments relate to today's regulations. This board's failure to comply with the public rulemaking process after notice of defect now constitutes a defect of malfeasance. All regulations must be adopted in conformance with NRS 233B. This fact is emphasized in the State Administrative Manual and is a fundamental principle of the separations of powers clause. Before the director may affix any effective date to any regulation that works to bind any person outside of the department, this board must conduct public workshops and provide responsive replies to public objections. Then the regulations must be submitted to the Legislative Council in order to ensure the regulations conform to the legislative intent before any effective date may be applied. This board never completes its intended public function. Instead, the director effectively hijacks the regulations and unilaterally affixes an effective date. This problem seems to be tied to the fact that this board does not have a staff and instead permits the department to act as judge, jury, and executioner without supervision, and as such amounts to a rogue agency conducting quasi-legislative activities in violation of Nevada Article 3 and Article 5. The effects have been catastrophic to my family, where registered voters are confined to a state prison without any criminal conviction through a bad classification practiced by the department. The Secretary of State determined in March that my husband, Michael Adkisson, is currently confined to a state prison without any criminal conviction, recognizing my husband as a legal elector and registered voter. This lawful determination by the Secretary of State was made based upon the official state conviction record with the central repository, where the department does not even know the difference between a judgment of conviction and a conviction record. The department's enabling statute, NRS 209.351, mandates reliance on the offender's conviction record. However, the department's regulation fails to identify this requirement. The board and the department continue to act in defiance of the law. For this reason, our efforts will now be focused on litigation. For the record, I object to the board's ongoing failure to adopt regulations without first conforming to the public rulemaking process. Finally, in recognition of the legislature's efforts, we encourage this board to prioritize the lawful establishment of regulations in order to ensure the office of the ombudsperson for offenders will be fully operational by January 2024, as contemplated by Assembly Bill 452. Also, if you can, the draft minutes are supposed to be available to us 30 days after these meetings, and that's not being done. So that's per chapter 241, I believe. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Gaddis. I have been formerly incarcerated at Florence McClure Women's Correctional. Today, I'd like to share my experience and concerns that have been ongoing and consistent around temperatures within the institution. Florence McClure was established in 1997 as one building. Since then, there has been additional units and buildings added. The additional units and buildings are 7, 8, 9, and 10. 7, 8, and 10 were added to the original building, and Unit 9 is a separate building. Although the prison as a whole is affected by the inadequacy of cooling and heat, these particular units have and continue to be the most affected and problematic. In 2013, I was in Unit 9, which is like a brick warehouse type of building. The air conditioner went out, complaints and grievances were submitted, maintenance was ignored. The response that everyone received was that they were waiting on parts. The problem remained this way throughout the entire summer. In addition to the lack of air, this is a program unit where you are expected to be fully clothed, wearing long pants, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. No accommodations were given. The extreme heat conditions and lack of ventilation caused complications to several others existing health problems, which also were ignored. In 2019, I was in Unit 7, where you are restricted to your cell approximately 20 hours a day. It was a summer as well. I remember seeing the heat wave warnings on the news. The air went out. This experience was unbearable and one of my worst experiences while being incarcerated. I filed an emergency grievance, and I remember comparing myself to a dog left in a vehicle in 110-degree heat with the window cracked, because that would describe the amount of airflow that would come from the space underneath the door. Fortunately, the difference in this scenario is that I had access to water. I would wet my clothes throughout the day and try to stay cool. I would wear less clothing and would get yelled at by the COs who would check the rooms. The response during this time, 6 years later, was also waiting on parts. I'm here to tell you that this issue wasn't just 2013 and 2019. It is every summer that the cooling system goes out, and every winter the heat goes out. I also find it rather odd that the medical and infirmary, which are in the same wing as 7, 8, and 10, stays at a constant cool. So to be clear here today, I'm not saying that prison should be comfortable, but what I am suggesting is that NDOC be safe and humane. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sonia Williams. My loved one was a member of Return Strong prior to his death at High Desert in 2021. I am now part of the core leadership team and an activist and part of almost everything that Return Strong does, from compassionate releases to legislative visitation and policy change. I'm also a founding member of the new initiative, Reunite Strong, which is named after my daughter, to the murder of Christian Walker. You name it, I am there for it. As I looked at the agenda today and reflected on all the work that I voluntarily do to ensure that we are educated and on top of what is happening, I don't have a lot to say. I just have questions. Questions I would love to be answered, but I know it's unlikely going to happen. Regarding failing facility inspections, capital improvement projects that have been on approved lists but never funded, and the disrepair at facilities that include the complete Department of Health failure of the kitchen at Southern Desert, I found some of these projects approved since 2007 and never addressed. Southern Desert has been known to not have hot water in the kitchen for years. How disgusting is that? No, it's even worse. Where is the money going? Why are none of these projects being taken seriously? What are the priorities at each facility? With the list of health code violations, why is Southern Desert still open, or Ely, or High Desert? What are the delays for capital improvement projects? Facility condition reports are done, but nothing was improved. We see the cycle: kitchen, sewage, no AC every summer, and maintenance is limited and running in circles trying to fix outdated, broken everything. Cell doors don't work, fencing doesn't work, cameras are missing all over the place, causing safety issues for incarcerated people and staff. If you don't care about our members and the people inside the prison, what about your staff? Where are the RFPs for all the things that are not passing codes? Why are people's food still filled with rodent droppings? Think about that. A year ago, Return Strong met with Daniels and some of the people that are here today to discuss all of that, and we were told that part of the problem is that the facilities in Nevada were not built correctly, or not built where the climate change is occurring. Swamp clearers won't cut it. If we are using prisons, we have to maintain them to at least to the point that we are not violating the 8th Amendment conditions of confinement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Ahern, A-H-E-R-N, and I am a member of Return Strong. Over the summer, I remember the extreme heat wave that affected Las Vegas, and during that time, my 2-year-old daughter and I would do our best to not leave the air-conditioned house. We were so thankful for that protection and luxury. Unfortunately, my incarcerated loved one spent many days in a unit without proper AC and did not have access to ice or extra water to stay cool. The first few days, we tried to make the best of it, make jokes about the desert, while hoping and praying that it would get fixed quickly. After a day or two, I could hear the difference in his attitude and his ability to hold a conversation. He was trying so hard to show up on the phone for me and our family, but just couldn't stand to exert extra effort with the extreme heat, all while continuing to work and the lack of relief from it all. He would tell me he was struggling to sleep in the heat, and even at night, it never felt like it cooled down. The medical director is scheduled to speak today about inspections and facilities failing those inspections, but one of the things I want to bring to your attention is the horrible state of these facilities and lack of maintenance. Director Zarenda spoke about it during the legislative session, and I understand that money is limited, but the heating and air conditioning in these buildings is horrendous. We live in a climate without global warming that's hot, and it keeps getting hotter. Please consider the health and safety of these men and women as you make decisions on where to update facilities, and don't forget the silenced voices of incarcerated loved ones. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm not going to get the scooter. I should have done my crutches. Hello, my name is Jody Hocking, Jodihockking. I'm going to attempt to keep it brief today because I think like this to me is a really beautiful thing to be able to see actually democracy in action and hear people who are normally marginalized and not able to have a voice, and for you guys to sit here and listen and hopefully actually really hear what we're saying. I know we kind of, Return Strong has a reputation for really being a little aggressive sometimes, but I do want to say this. Our goal here today is not only to bring voices of people who don't have the opportunity to come here and sit and have a conversation, but also to be partners in finding solutions. And I think that is one thing I do want to give the new administration credit for, is that Director Zarenda is like, I think my phone's on speed dial, the poor guy. But it has been, we've been able to really like work and solve issues. When Return Strong first started showing up in 2020, our call was for communication and transparency. Those are our people, our loved ones, our children, our spouses, our siblings that are in those prisons. And it creates anxiety out here for people in the community, for kids at school, for people at work, that we're all trying to function with what is also happening. And so being part of this voice and all of these people who take their vacation time and come here and sit to talk to you, I appreciate that you're listening. I hope that you really hear us and that we continue to do the work and grow and improve and address conditions within NDOC. And I'm going to make a quick comment about food. Hopefully in a few months, I won't have to talk about this experience. My husband got his board coming up in a few weeks and hopefully he'll be home. If anyone wants to write a letter, let me know. I'm more than happy to let you write a support letter for him. But I was at Visit the other day, and we've had a really hard time. He came back on a violation, and it has right before COVID. It was in November of 2019 when he came back, and he spent decades, most of his life, in and out of prison. And we were talking about the food and like, why are we fighting about this all the time? And as our work group has been doing, we've been really doing research on understanding food insecurity in general, in communities, in prison, across the country, in other countries, and how those things impact. And one of the things that he said to me this weekend was the degree of anxiety that he has when he sees food from store and commissary starting to dwindle even a little bit. He can't function. He's like, I'm sitting in programming. I'm not thinking about anger management. I'm thinking about, oh my God, what am I going to do if I can't get food? What if she doesn't have money for food? What if? And I think to discount the mental health impact that these issues around food are having. All right. Thank you, Danielle. You're welcome. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
So, Ms. Hocking, for the record, we're in receipt of your emails.
Pardon me?
We're in receipt of your emails.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Robert Abasta, ABA-STA. I was recently incarcerated in NDOC and I was released. Our great state of Nevada supplied my meals these last 6 years. And I can personally tell you about the quality and the quantity issues. There was this one time that all they served us was these burnt oatmeals where they didn't even put enough water in it to cook it, and it was like burnt. And I tell you burnt, I mean like black, like burnt. And we were told to eat it or starve, that they didn't care either way. Or the time that they do give you one little scoop of eggs, like 2-ounce scoop of eggs, and they give it to you, that and like a little thing of oatmeal. Like that's not a grown man's food. You know, they'll sit there, give us 2 pieces of bologna with 4 breads, tell us that that's our lunch. That's not even nutritional. I promise you that's not 30% of what you're supposed to eat for lunch as far as nutrition and calories are concerned. They'll sit there, give you 1 little peanut butter of the Lucky's peanut butter with 2 of diabetic jellies that you can't even eat nothing out of it. You eat it and it makes you more hungry because all it does is tease your stomach. They constantly underfeed us, and then when the food comes from the kitchen, the sample tray will call for X amount of scoops. They'll give you half of that if they start to run out. Instead of calling the kitchen, hey, you need to make more food for unit X, they'll just sit there and be like, nah, just cut the ration short. And then they give us little portions of low quality food, and that's illegal. I looked up the word cruel in the Webster Dictionary, and the meaning is disposed to inflict pain and suffering, devoiding of human emotions. That's exactly what they're trying to do to us when they feed us less than human, calling our food chow, telling us it's chow time. We're not dogs, we're human beings. We have feelings. We might have made mistakes, but it doesn't give you a right to torture us with our food, underserve us, give us food that is meant for dogs. I used to work in the kitchen. I've personally seen the boxes that say not for human consumption. Would you want to eat that? Would you want your kids to eat that? We make mistakes, but we're still humans. And I asked the CO what that means, not for human consumption. I think I was 19 at the time when I seen that. I don't know what that means. And he told me to mind my business and to just keep unloading the boxes. We have rights protected to us for our constitution of no cruel and unreasonable punishment. I've seen it known firsthand that NDOC sends and serves food that's expired. And I'm not talking month expired, I'm talking expired. And they'll sit there and still send it from wherever the main undocking place is to the facilities. And we were told to serve them because I speak up about things. I said, hey, sir, this is expired. You want me to put it back in the truck? He said, no, put it in the kitchen or you're fired. I had no choice. This man's over me. So, you know, but that's all I just want to say. And I hope, you know, everybody's testimonies could help fix things for the better.
Thank you.
My name is Karen Juarez, Juarez. Good morning. My loved one is a member of Return Strong, and I am here to make sure that his voice and our voices are heard. I know you have already heard a lot about food insecurity. I want to make a brief point regarding some of the solutions we have heard and are being considered. One is that NDOC will give people choices on a menu once they receive the tablets. Choice is an amazing thing. Having choices is always better than no choices, but our concern is that this is a symbolic choice that will not truly address all the complexities that are a part of the food, lack of food, hunger, food vendor contracts, rotten food, approved menus versus what is actually served. These are complicated layers of problems that are rooted in a belief that food can be used as a punishment and a means to dehumanize human beings. How would you feel if you sat down to eat and were given food with broken pieces in it and maggots or packets of maple syrup to make up for missing calories? Choice is great when you are given multiple good choices to choose from, and there is an oversight and accountability to ensure that choices are followed through on. We are thrilled tablets are coming, but they don't walk on water, and we can't pretend that they do. As we continue to say, let's find real solutions, not Band-Aids. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good. Okay, hi, my name is Vivian Jones, Jones. I have a son that's incarcerated, been incarcerated at NDOC for 20 years. We've heard it all. You know, we heard everyone's story of Return Strong and other ones. And we're not here to bash NDOC, but to bring awareness and to think for things to change. My son don't complain a lot, but he do let me know what's going on in there, you know, and I noticed that he told me about the portions of food and all that, but he just don't, you know, say too much. But when we in visiting, I noticed how he eat, and I was just like, you want more? You want more? You know, it's like I bring $50, it's gone. And that stuff is very expensive up in there. He eating 2 cheeseburgers, a chicken sandwich. I said, son, you want some chips, drinks? It's like he's basically starving. Like, you can see, like, I'm going to eat all I can before I get in there. I'm a single parent, too. You know, so me sending money in there is expensive for me, but I've been doing it for 20 years. You know, I believe in justice. I believe, you know, they went to prison, they did the crime, they need to do their time. But I do also believe in the 8th Amendment. And I just thank you guys for listening to us. And we just here to bring awareness of what the different things that's going on in the prison. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
You're welcome.
Is there any other public comment? All right, I see no further public comment. And just for the record, Ms. Madsen, both board members here today are in possession of Ms., I don't know if it's Ms. or Mr. Kubiak's emails.
Yes.
Correct? All right. All right, we will close agenda item number 2, public comment. And before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'm going to call a recess for 5 minutes. And then, so we will be back here at hopefully right at 11 o'clock to reconvene. let's reconvene. And can I have some acknowledgement from Carson City that you have communications? Are you ready to go there?
Governor, yes, we're ready in the north.
All right, thank you. So let's call to order in continuance of the Board of State Prison Commissioners meeting. And we are currently on agenda item number 3, acceptance and approval of minutes from the May 25th, 2023 meeting. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Yeah, corrections. Yeah. I don't have any.
Okay. I move approval.
Okay. So we have a motion for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And since it's just the two of us, unanimous. Motion passes. And we will close agenda item 3, move to agenda item number 4. Report from the Chief Medical Officer from the Nevada State Chief Medical Office. And who's that? Director is Dorinda?
Yes.
Up north. Oh, he's up there.
Morning, Governor. Morning, Attorney General. For the record, I'm Vincent Valiente with the Division of Public and Behavioral Health. I'm presenting the Chief Medical Officer's report today to the board on behalf of Dr. Azam. As of the date of this report, unannounced dietary and sanitation inspections have occurred in 3 state prisons: High Desert State Prison, Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center, and Southern Desert Correctional Center. Table 1 summarizes the critical findings during each inspection. For High Desert State Prison, 4 criticals were recognized during the inspection on June 15th. Equipment not properly sanitized, potential for cross-contamination that was seen in the culinary 3-compartment sink area and operations when there was no detectable sanitizer used at the time of inspection during the washing of soiled dishes. Equipment not properly sanitized. The high-temperature dishwashing machines were in disrepair, malfunctioning at the time of inspection, and were not properly sanitizing within the correct temperature ranges. Culinary offender staff were not following good hygienic practices. Culinary offender staff were observed handling ready-to-eat food with bare hands. In the common fare, refrigeration units were not at proper temperature. 2 common fare refrigeration units were not holding a temperature of 41 degrees or below at the time of inspection. I have a note here for High Desert. We recently received plans for the replacement of the dish machines, and those plans were approved, and I believe that is in process. For Florence McClure Correctional Center, 1 critical was identified during inspection. Equipment was not being properly sanitized. The final rinse was not activating at the time of inspection at the high temperature dish machine. Southern Desert Correctional Center, 6 criticals were identified during inspection. Hand washing sinks were not fully operational. Multiple hand sinks were not stocked with soap and paper towels. Culinary offender staff were not following good hygienic practices at the time of inspection. Culinary staff were not washing their hands within food preparation areas, dishwashing areas, in between changing duties. Equipment was not being properly sanitized, and there was a potential for cross-contamination. Culinary offender staff were observed not completing the necessary steps to properly wash, rinse, and sanitize soiled ware. This was observed at the common fare 3-compartment sink and the culinary dishwashing machine. In addition, culinary offender staff were observed improperly using hand washing sinks to rinse culinary utensils. Another additional equipment not being properly sanitized, both high temperature dish machines within Southern Desert were in disrepair or malfunctioning at the time of inspection. There was presence of insects. Live roaches were observed throughout the culinary operations. With Southern Desert, another side note was made. As discussed with the facility staff, the improper dishwashing and poor hygienic practices observed during the inspection posed the greatest risk for a facility-wide foodborne illness outbreak. It's important to note that the dishwashing and sanitizing issues are consecutive repeated violations cited over several years of the facility operations. Furthermore, no preventative maintenance PM for culinary equipment was observed or could be verified by staff. Facility maintenance staff must follow a consistent PM schedule to prevent equipment malfunction from daily use. The PM must include an applicable regular, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and/or annual servicing checklist of supportive facilities, such as, but not limited to, culinary refrigeration, hot holding equipment, plumbing, dishwashing, HVAC, waste management, etc. I have another note here too as well. The NDOC compliance enforcement officer that we tour with during inspection ensures corrective actions will be promptly taken by the facility for critical violations which could not be corrected by the end of each inspection. All remaining dietary and sanitation inspections of correctional facilities will be completed by end of year for 2023. Nutritional adequacy inspections at High Desert, Florence McClure, and Southern Desert Correctional Center. They were inspected for nutritional adequacy during the sanitation dietary inspections. 0 deficient practices were identified regarding nutritional compliance during the inspections. The nutritional adequacy inspections look for certified menus in place by dietitians, certified menus in place followed by the facility during inspection. The meal served at the time of inspection is consistent with the menu. Spreadsheets with portion sizes provided or other means of documentation reviewed or portion sizes provided. Substitutions documented. Certified, and the last two were certified menu and nutritional values are available for inmate review. Other items too during nutritional adequacy inspections we look for are that medical diets are offered at the facility, applicable medical diets, and this also includes common fare religious diets and ensuring the common fare kitchens are being operated. Medical inspections for 2023 have been scheduled to be completed in September and October of this year. The 2 facilities will be Ely State Prison and Lovelock Correctional Center. The next Nevada Board of Commissioners report from the Chief Medical Officer will summarize additional data gathered in 2023, including medical, dietary sanitation, and nutritional adequacy. This concludes the report. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Valente?
I do.
Go ahead, sir.
All right. Thanks for your report, Mr. Valente. Greatly appreciated. Obviously, concerned about quite a bit of what you've talked about today. Let me take the last bit first and have you maybe detail a little bit more to me about how you do the nutritional adequacy inspections. Obviously, what you've indicated in your report today is different from what we've heard in public comment relative to menus and portion size and things of that sort. So maybe give us a little more information about how you perform those types of audits and inspections.
Okay, Attorney General. Well, as you know, inspection's a snapshot in time. So as I'm there, I look for the food stored there, the food consistent with the menu. The menus followed by the facility. How I do that too, as well as I look at their 72-hour hold on menus. They call it dead man trays. I review those trays while I'm on site to ensure that the previous 3 days were served consistent with the menu. I also verify that substitutions are documented. The availability of food is also reviewed at the warehouse of each facility where they have the stock of the food that's being delivered to the kitchens. The other thing I do verify is that they have a licensed dietitian that is creating these menus that the NDOC is contracting with.
Follow up?
Yes.
Remind me, are these inspections random or are they announced? That is, do you give...
The sanitation dietary inspections are unannounced. They do not know I'm coming.
Okay. Do you speak with the offenders when you look at the nutritional adequacy inspections?
So I do not speak with the offenders about the nutritional adequacy, but when I do speak with the offenders during observations of non-compliance with the dietary and sanitation. If I see something that could be corrected or that could be trained that I could provide while I'm on site, I do that. So that's the communication I do have with them, such as, like I said, some of the critical violations observed, say, dishwashers are not working properly. There are a lot of options you can do during that time to ensure that dishes are being properly sanitized, such as, say the dish machine's not getting to 180 degrees, we can create a process where we can wash, rinse in the dish machine, and then dip in sanitizer solution. I'll go through that training with the staff. If it's hygienic practices, we could re-review that on site. But when it comes to nutritional adequacy, I do not communicate with the inmate or with the offender staff. Sorry.
Is there a reason why you don't speak to the offenders on that particular issue?
I don't know if there's a specific reason why. I'm just conducting my inspection work, and it's never included the offender staff interviews.
Would you consider making that a new part of your inspection, having conversations with the offenders to compare what you're reading relative to these 72-hour lookbacks and the substitutions, and just getting a person account from offenders on what the nutrition stuff looks like?
Yes, I can consider that. I will discuss that with the chief medical officer, but my time's limited in the facilities, and the offender staff that I do interact with is mainly in the culinary. And so, yes, I can consider that.
Okay, very good. Other questions here. I know that you indicated in the note here that NDOC compliance enforcement officer ensures that corrective action will be promptly taken by the facility for critical violations. But right above that, we note that we have, let me find your quote here. It's important to note that the dishwashing and sanitizing issues are consecutive, repeated violations cited over several years of facility inspections. Help me understand how we are still allowing, or how these are still occurring, these separate, maybe it's not for you to answer, maybe it's for the department to answer, but that does concern me, that you keep noting these as violations, but they continue to happen consecutively.
And I am making a point to note those those repeat critical violations. I believe this is a question for the NDOC. While I'm on site, I just ensure at the time of witnessing the issue to have a corrective action, have an immediate corrective action, so that moving forward after I leave the facility, I know that I've provided that training, and that that new, say, routine or operation is safe for the institution. Okay, thank you. I think I will present that to the department as well. They'll be able to respond. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Zarenda. Or Ms. Shea?
Sure. Introduce, just James Zarenda, Director for the Nevada Department of Corrections. Just want to introduce our Director of Support Services, Christina Shea, who was prepared to probably assist with some of the questions that the Attorney General had questioned us.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your report. So Christina Shea for the record. I think first of all, I want to say that we take these, Director Zarenda, myself, and the leadership team take these things very seriously. In our prison system. So I just want to state that this is important to us, it's important to our agency, and it's important for us to get into corrective action as quickly as possible. To answer your question about, why has this been happening, I can say that, in my experience with the department is that the funding for critically needed culinary systems has been inadequately funded over the past, 10 legislative sessions. Another example of it is at High Desert, there is a CIP project to replace dishwashers. I'll share with you that this came from the last legislative session. So we're 2.5 years past, and the project is, working with State Public Works. They're seeing delays. These are very large industrial units that take time, and there's increased cost. So there's delays with working with the State Public Works Division to be able to get, timely replacement of equipment. And
on that issue, I recall last meeting we talked about Public Works being contacted to help facilitate that, expedite it. Tell me the status of that.
Yeah, we're working with State Public Works related to our doors at Southern Desert Correctional Center and some other things. But as it relates to the equipment, the dishwashing equipment, that's going to be next on our list to have conversations about how they can expedite these systems to be able to get us into compliance quicker, so that we're not continuing to have the same conversation over and over again about the equipment.
I'm just thinking out loud here, right? I'm wondering why the entire list of what's needed isn't presented at the same time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Public Works should be able to do more than one project at the same time. Yeah. So have we tried that?
Yeah, we're working with State Public Works. And in general, what I'll say about our culinary system coming in, one of the things that we're working on with Aramark, who's our food vendor, is doing a comprehensive review department-wide with Cook's Correctional Facilities, which is an organization that is experts in the space of, providing the type of heavy-duty kitchen equipment that we need in our prison system, because it's beat up. It's got a lot of, there's a lot of wear and tear on it. And Cook's is going to be coming in to do a comprehensive review that goes over our tray systems, our cart systems, our equipment systems, and going to be providing that information to us department-wide so that we can really understand, because one of the hardest things I see is when we're working with State Public Works, making sure we're getting dishwashers that fit our tray systems and the tray systems fit our cart systems. So it's this really comprehensive review that I think we need to start doing as a department, and Director Zorinda and I are committed to doing that. So I think there's future hope for the department as we move forward.
And I know that he said that this is, trying to use the right, consecutive and repeated, the violations, but correct me if I'm wrong, this is under your tenure, this is the first inspection that has occurred. Am I right about that?
It is, but we knew these violations. We knew we were forward.
I appreciate that acknowledgement, but I just wanted to ensure that in terms of being repeated under your administration, this is the first you've heard of it. And I can expect then that I won't hear them say next go around that this is another repeated consecutive violation. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, Director Zorinda and I are committed to this. We take this very seriously, and we are going to move into action to make sure, in the next month or two, we're getting these things addressed. We're not going to let them continue to be unaddressed.
Okay, and the last thing I'll say, and I'll turn the mic back to the chairman, to our governor. There are overlaps of board memberships, and I'm speaking right now in my capacity as a Board of Prison Commissioner, but we talked in May 25th at the last meeting about financial resources that you may need in order to accomplish some of these goals. I stand willing to argue for those in other capacities, so keep that in the back of your mind as well. But I would like to see certainly improvement by the next meeting. We meet every 3 months or so, right? So I would like to see some improvement on what it is you're talking about happening with Public Works and whatnot. And if you need conversation coming from outside of your office, if I need to call somebody, you let me know, please. Okay? All right, thanks so much. Perfect. Mr. Governor, I'm sorry, that's it.
Oh, thank you. So, Director Zorinda, can you provide some clarification on the funding and what we're in the process of immediately addressing?
Sure. So it's split between the stuff that has already been approved through CIP projects, which we were talking about that are on the Public Works plate. However, in the next IFC in October, you'll start seeing the rest of the items. Everything that we saw that was not addressed in the last administration or that was brought up in legislation for the CIP, we're reintroducing it to make sure that we cover all this 100%. And that'll be up in the October. It was in the August and was pulled. Don't know why, but it was pulled out of the IFC in August, which is now on the agenda for October.
I also would like to hear. Okay.
So, Ms. Shea, that funding source has been identified working with the GFO?
Yeah, right now the funding source is ARPA funding.
And you have an idea what that amount is akin to?
Yeah, it's roughly $8.2 million for the department.
Okay.
Department-wide.
So for the following Board of State Prison Commissioners, can we have Public Works provide a document and you again present the status of the items identified and the document of the Public Works inventory issue or resource issues?
Yes.
With the timeline associated with it?
Yes.
Thank you.
I could. One more thing.
Sure.
It's not on this agenda item. I'm just saying it out loud so you know that it's on my mind as well. We heard about the air conditioning and heating concerns. We talked about that last go around HVAC issues, and I hope that that's likewise part of the conversation with Public Works and or procurement to be certain that happens as well. I'm not asking for a response. I'm just thinking out loud here. So when the time is right, I will want a response to that, though. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we will close. It's informational only. Agenda item number 4. We move on to agenda item number 5, director's comments and department updates for discussion only.
Sure. So the first topic I wanted to bring up, we have a new medical director for the Department of Correction. I brought him here today. He can go over a quick history of himself. He's just retired from Tennessee. He was the medical director in the Tennessee Department of Corrections for many years. He's also the president of the, if I got this right, president of the medical division for ACA, which is the American Corrections Association. We're lucky to have him. It was a referral that was probably the best referral I got, and turned out that we got a good catch for the state of Nevada for our future. But it's Dr. Ken Williams.
Thanks. So first of all, I'd like to thank Director Zarenda and Governor Lombardo and citizens of Nevada for the opportunity to serve you. Not president of the health division. I'm a health commissioner for ACA. I believe that correctional health care is community health care, and some of the advocates made a point about their loved ones coming home. And I believe that it's important for all of us to work together to help give them the things that they need to address some of their criminogenic behavior so that they can reassimilate in our society, because they are ours. 95 to 97% of them are coming home, and we want them to be best equipped to function as effective citizens, just like the rest of us. I will intrude on your offer to Dee Dee Shea to support some of her initiatives, and I'll take advantage of that opportunity to reach out for some support. I'm committed to work with my colleagues to move things along in the state of Nevada. I know that we need some short-term resolutions, but I also readily recognize that we should look at some infrastructure changes as well, so that we won't be addressing the same issues a year from now, 5 years from now. Change is a continuous challenge. We have to always be prepared to change. And I'm committed to work with all of our colleagues to see that change come to fruition.
Question? Sure. Okay. Well, welcome to Nevada. I just want to say I don't want you to get upcharged. And because when you get upcharged, it ain't price gouging. I'm not gonna come. Don't call me when you get upcharged for saying Nevada. No, I'm just joking. Welcome to Nevada, Dr. Williams. Great to have you here. You've heard testimony today from members of Return Strong and others about issues that they've laid out from a medical perspective, prescription issues, treatment plans, and outside doctors refusing to assist. And I'm not asking you to comment on those, but you heard them. And you've seen that this is an active board that's going to ask questions. And I would hope that we can count on you to address, at a minimum, to the extent that can be addressed, what has been raised in public comment. Just saying that out loud for you to know that that's something on my radar as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Governor.
And I have to applaud that you pronounced Director Zarenda's name correct, besides the state.
Yeah.
It took me a while to pronounce his name right. So, he's got a mysterious D at the beginning. Yeah. You don't say it. So, welcome aboard. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The next item is the offender nutritional menu. The stuff that was brought up in the public comment today really addresses back from January 2019. And that's really where the change in the food services occurred. The state ended up going the direction to limit the amount of sodium in the food up to 2,200 milligrams and limit the protein, the amount of protein that can be in food. That started in January of 2019. Since then, the department has made that mandate on Aramark. It is not Aramark's fault that the food is how it is in the quantity. It is because of what we mandated on the amount of sodium and protein. They had to find vendors that actually can meet our needs, which was very difficult because we were, according to them, we were the only state in the country that was providing this type of a meal to the offenders. So what we've done with Christina Shea's help getting with Aramark's contract, we are now going to be moving back to a menu that is basically how it was pre-2019. However, it's going to match whatever Aramark found as the best menu that they use in correctional agencies in the country, that they were going to select the best state that they thought was less complaints, best nutrition, and best adequate number and quantity of food. And what I want to make sure it's clear is we still will be providing 2,200 milligram max food and limited protein, but it will be through medical. Special diets will still be approved so that we will be still offering it. Just is not going to be mandated to be offered and given to every single offender if they didn't want it. So it will change. It is going to change. They've been here all week doing assessments in the department. This is Aramark. They are going to be providing us, and Christina Shea may have better timelines. They're going to be providing us those menus. The menus were requested to be put out to all offenders so that they can actually select and determine what they would prefer. That's what was mentioned about the selection of the menus based upon what they can offer. So I do know there's going to be a big difference in the quantity and the type of food that we're going to be providing from this point on. And like I said, Christina Shea may have timelines for it, but I think that is going to correct the issues that the department enforced on Aramark in the past.
Ms. Shea, are you prepared to present timelines?
Of course, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So again, I've spent most of my time going into the prisons and talking to the offenders. So the comment that you said, to ask the inspector to actually go in and talk, that's a good thing. And I got my motivation by talking to the offenders in the system. So it looks like with Aramark, it's about a 6-week change. I authorized the menus about 3 weeks ago. So they're thinking about 7 weeks. So we're hoping by October, the first week of October, that in the institutions, the supply chain will be the new inventory will be in, the new supply chain will be in, and the offenders will be able to have access to a menu that will fill them up and be healthy and provide adequate nutritional value, but also so that they can rest and not have the hunger pains.
Thank you.
All right. Next topic of the agenda is the reentry programming for the state. First, what I did, and he can address it as well, I brought with me here today to introduce everyone to our statewide reentry administrator, who is Michael Williams at the end of the table down here. What I wanted to clarify to make sure everyone understood is first of all, what is reentry and when does it start? When you start listening to what's been discussed in whether it's legislation or what you read, reentry starts at 2 years, whatever you've heard, 2 years prior to the end of sentence, 6 months. It's not true. We start reentry at day 1. When the offender comes into the agency, we have what's called under our NRAS, the Nevada Risk Assessment Tool. We start going over needs and both medical, mental health needs and programming needs of the offenders the second they get in our door. Once they get in, we have it's called a PIT. It's our tool that we use for first entry initiation tool, which that provides all of our reentry coordinators and our case management staff what the offender, that specific offender needs to successfully get to his or her end of sentence or parole so that they can actually have the services before they go out. When we talk about reentry, there's 4 of our major reentry tools or programs are based upon what we know from national best practices and evidence-based. The difference between the two, which you might have heard me talk before, evidence-based programming is based upon data that's been researched over a 3-year period minimum that has proven to have 51% or more of those that were in that program were successful. That's what evidence-based is, that it works 51% or more of the time that it is proven by evidence that mission of that program actually is working. So that's how we determine what programs we actually do from looking at national evidence-based, because we're not going to waste our staff time and offenders going through programs that are not going to work. We put our resources into those programs that will, that we know are going to make the impact. Best practices is a different type of program. Best practices programming are programs that there's no evidence base that is available to say that it does work 51% or more of the time. However, it's the only program in that type of behavior that actually does something that is close. It's what all state agencies are using to say we can't do anything, and what we're going to do is do something that is the best practice from that agency, because they know it's going to be closest to evidence-based, because there's no data out there that shows that it is. So those are the two different types. We have 4 major types. If you look at any research, the best evidence-based programming that has been the largest tool in the country that works for behavior issues is something called MRT. It's moral recognition therapy, which these programs, Mike Williams is going to go over if we need to. But the 4 largest programs in any reentry services that we consider as best evidence-based that we have are the MRT, Getting It Right, Good Intentions, Bad Choices, and Reentry Aftercare. These are not our programs invented. These are programs that are done nationally that, like I said, are proven to be the most effective in reentry. When you talk about what happens in reentry, we do concentrate. This is probably where the numbers come from. We do concentrate to make sure that every offender receives these programs, or that they're necessary under the NRAS to say that they actually needed it. We do make sure that we concentrate to make sure that those programmings have been done prior to 2 years, or at the 2-year mark, marking down there which ones we haven't, to start tracing them to make sure that they get them either before their parole hearings or before they're released under discharging. One thing that I think is important to look at when we say if we're successful or not is August of every year we provide a recidivism rate study. Recidivism rate studies in the Department of Corrections are the same thing as the evidence base. It's based on data over a 3-year period. So the data that you get from today's or this month's reentry report, which was the recidivism study, was started from the data from 2019. So it's all the offenders that were released from Nevada Department of Corrections in 2019 for whatever reason, whether it was end of sentence, whether it was parole. Those offenders were studied and tracked over a 3-year period of where they were, what they did, if they came back. Recidivism rate did go down from the previous. We're at 24.7 is our recidivism rate overall for the agency. What we found out was that the women's recidivism rate went down, men's recidivism rate went up. And we look at that data because we try to find out what the largest, first of all, what the largest reasons for recidivism was, to try to concentrate on that for the following year in our resources, but also to see what's worked. And what we found out from all those cohorts that we studied since 2019, the number one effect on reducing recidivism was vocational led services, so that's why we are in the Department of Corrections are going to focus on that for our next cycle. How do we increase our vocational led services? How do we increase it in facilities that don't have it? How do we increase the numbers of the offenders? We're looking at doing majority of our vocational led services earlier now, which we're going to focus on the medium security facilities, which they've never really had before. So I think that's important to show, because what we're going to try to do is see the impacts that this, with the increase in the vocational led services, is going to make on the state. and see when the next 3-year study comes out of what we did with those services. What did shock me in this year's reentry recidivism rate study was the substance use disorder treatment was not, which I was expecting to be our #1 cohort on reducing recidivism, which it was not. Which is interesting of what we're hearing from around the country, that our largest number of offenders that we have some type of substance use disorder. So you would think that that would be our #1 cohort to target to reduce recidivism, and it was not in our study. So that's really what I had. Any specific questions the panel may have on these specific programs or what they actually do? Like I said, I have our statewide reentry coordinator, administrator here today as well.
General?
Yes. I don't know if I understood exactly what you meant about the substance use disorder issue. So are you saying that there is a large recidivism rate for those who have substance use disorder, or the opposite? What are you saying?
So it's both. So what happens is what the recidivism study shows is that our substance use disorder programming did not make the major impact on those going to the community to prevent them from coming back.
Okay.
Vocational ed services did. Okay. Even though our largest number of population, which is over 2/3 of our population, are in for some type of substance use or substance related crimes.
So a follow-up question on that. I have a question about the vocational ed too, but the substance use disorder issue, are you looking to revamp your program or to amend the program to address, or were you able to figure out how to revamp your program to address recidivism issues?
So we're teaming up with grants to try to, if it's because we're not doing enough or we're not doing it adequately, our grants, which Mike can talk about, our grants are going to now focus on what is being done around the country that we can get from these grants to increase substance use disorder programming or revamp at what we do with the substance use disorder programming.
Okay. Do you know if other states are seeing better results with their programming though? With substance use programming?
Yes, okay. Yes, that's what I have found.
Very good. All right, second question is on the I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. You want to comment, Mr.
Oh, no. The main thing that we have found is that with substance abuse and reentry, it's a matter of boots on the ground. If we don't have the adequate staff to be able to offer these programs, then we're not going to have much success, because we have to be very studious with where we put our people. I know in the substance abuse side, there's not substance abuse counselors at every institution. And I know from my side, for reentry, we don't have reentry program officers in every institution. We just don't have. I've got 23 people to cover the whole state, and 6 of those are for Medicaid and vital records. So that means I got 17 people to cover the whole state for reentry program officers. And I just you can only spread them so far. But that's the main thing we worry about, is finding out where we can put our people to get the best use out of them. And according to what the director said about the vocational village that we're trying to open up, that is going in a medium security institution at Southern Desert, because they've never had that in the past.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that that's going to do a whole lot towards reducing recidivism, because they're going to give those people those skills and knowledge and what they need to be successful once they're released.
Appreciate that, and certainly understand the human resource component of this. I think the whole state experiencing that. My office experiences it, so I'm certainly sympathetic to what's going on in that regard. The vocational ed, I'm excited to hear that that's helpful. I'm reminded of the pilot program that we started when I was in the Senate that deals with both education and vocational training, and I suspect that one's still ongoing.
Well, it never really got far off the ground from the last administration. That's why it's my priority to make sure it does.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are you interested in what they're doing at High Desert?
I'm interested in what you're doing at High Desert.
Sure. So what's happening in that ground compound of High Desert, Southern Desert compound is going next into IFC. You'll see in the October IFC, there's also going to be a donation that's going to be given to the department for a pad. It's a training pad for tractor trailer driving training. Once that gets approved, the company that's going to be putting in our pad also is going to be donating tractor trailer trucks to us to be able to teach offenders to be able to get their CDL license. What we monitored in the community was, or nationally, is the difficulty of finding CDL qualified or licensed individuals for these jobs. We do think that since there's such a huge demand, that's going to be a big plus on our end to be able to find offenders jobs in those skilled and higher paying sustainable jobs. With that, next to the pad on the Southern Desert is going to be a vocational village. Vocational village, we're going through Hope for Prisoners. We have they have the providers that are going to be providing job skills training as of carpentry, HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. And they're going to be doing it all in this vocational village. And what's different today is it's going to be offered to any offender, where before we usually concentrate those high services and training on the low level that are about to be discharged or closer. This is going to be at a medium facility, which I do believe is going to open it up to qualified offenders all over the state to be able to come there to do this type of training that is going to be sustainable for living and is high quality training that is going to get them their certification and license. Big deal.
I absolutely love to hear this. Absolutely. And you know, I've been a staunch advocate for reentry programs for a while. And so kudos to you all for integrating this at this level into and for the results you're seeing.
Yep. Thank you.
Any further questions?
I think so.
Director.
So the last thing I wanted to do is go over our use of force audit. And up in Carson City, this is our Inspector General, James Kendall Jones. He'll explain where this audit actually came from, why it came, and where we are with our use of force compliance to these recommendations that were made by the Legislative Council Bureau.
Good morning, Governor Lombardo, Attorney General Ford, James Jones for the record, Inspector General, Nevada Department of Corrections. Legislative Auditor Report LA 22-11 was issued to the Nevada Department of Corrections on May 22nd, 2022. The purpose of the audit was to evaluate the department's processes over the use of reporting and certain related activities. The audit report contains 16 recommendations to improve the department's process over the use of force reporting and certain related activities. The department accepted the 16 recommendations. The Nevada Department of Corrections has successfully completed and corrected the 16 deficiencies identified by the LCB audit. This was completed by the Office of the Inspector General, Information Technologies Division, Training and Operations staff. Administrative regulations have been or are being modified to reflect corrective action taken in those instances where regulatory change is required. Training of all involved staff is being conducted and will continue to be conducted as new staff are hired, promoted, or transferred in order to maintain a level of proficiency. The 16 audit recommendations can be found on the LCB Audit Division website under Legislative Audits 2021 through 2022, Department of Corrections Use of Force, LA 22-11.
Questions? James, could you just do a favor and repeat the website location one more time?
Yes, it's the LCB Audit Division website, Legislative Audits, LA 2021 to 2022, Department of Corrections Use of Force, LA 22-11 audit. The Legislative Council Bureau Auditor's website.
All right, thank you. Just a comment is I commend you for receiving 16 recommendations and acting on them expeditiously and correcting those, which will hopefully make a difference. Thank you, James. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll close agenda item number 5 if you don't have any further. Mr. Zarenda?
No.
Any further questions? And we'll move on to agenda item number 6, administrative regulations for discussion and possible action.
So what I'll do is I'll go over briefly each one, and you just have to ask some questions if you need to on each of them. They're all pretty basic, similar changes that were mandated by the new NRSs, the state statutes that came out, which I'll go over what they are and what the changes were. The very first one is AR 100, which is our administrative regulations. HR 100 is our process to provide what we do in our process to get a change in an AR or a regulation or develop a new regulation, what that process is and how does it make it actually to the BOPC. The largest change that happened in the AR 100 this time around was the 233B process. Under 233B process, what came out in this year's legislation is that any AR that's related to the 200 series that you see in our ARs and anything related to visiting and mail all have to go through a 233B process. It's not all of our ARs, it's just those that are in 200 series, mail and commissary. So those ARs, well, I'm not 100% sure how the 233B process works. We're working with the governor's finance office to make sure we do it correctly and publicize it. And so those will be we'll be facing those very shortly. But that's really the only changes that were in the AR 100 was the 233B. Good. Yep. The next one I go over is AR 507 is restrictive housing. This one really just what it does is it identifies, this was based on Senate Bill 307. This identifies, we changed our language in our ARs to identify what solitary confinement definition is, what restrictive housing unit is, and what disciplinary segregation unit is. Instead of calling it all restrictive segregation, it is now restrictive housing, and it identifies those three areas of what they actually are. The other thing it did was to clarify in past state statute was changing an inmate to offender. The language from inmate to offender is on here as well. The other thing was on 507 was this single cell and double cell housing decision. What it just addressed in here is the process for it, that it is not one person or one division's sole decision. It's done through a committee. And the process of reviewing for single cell or double cell status is built into this AR to have it as a committee decision, not an individual decision. But that's all I have for 507.
A question on this one.
Sure.
A question, Jim. I'm wondering if there might be a typo in our definitions of restricted housing and solitary confinement. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Restricted housing says it is when someone's restricted to a cell for 22 hours or more per day. And then solitary confinement says it's restricted to a cell for more than 22 hours per day. They seem to be saying the same thing. 22 hours or more, and then more than 22 hours. Am I missing it? No. You see what
the restrictive housing is anyone that has 22 more hours that is restricted to their cell, not less than 22 hours. The other one is not more than, so it is a typo.
Hold on, what you just said.
So restrictive housing is anyone that is restricted to their cell or location. However, they're out of their cells for 22 or more hours a day, not less than. So if you're solitary, you're less than 22 hours a day out of your cell.
And if you are, I'm off.
So restrictive housing, it really came out of the solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is anyone that's locked in their cell for 22 or more hours a day. That's locked in their cell.
Okay.
Restrictive housing is not that cohort, it's the other. It's those that are restricted to their unit. However, they're allowed out of their cell for more than 22 hours.
Okay. I think
but they're still restricted. I agree. They're still restricted in their cell.
That's what makes sense. All right, so 513, if you take a look at 513, that language may be what we want to use. Take a look at the definitions there and tell me if that's more appropriate.
It's still different. Now that still has to be clarified.
I wouldn't
those that are restricted in their unit, not in their cell.
All right, I wouldn't try to do
anyone that's restricted in the unit is restrictive housing, not in their cell.
Okay.
So you're right.
Can you bring it back,
yeah.
Mr. Governor? So do you want to
since we have, well, let's continue to go through, and then if we've identified corrections, we'll make a motion separately.
Okay.
Right. So we're AR 100s are good. We have corrections on AR 507, right?
513.
Right. Or is it 507
Both.
and
Both.
513?
Both.
Okay. And we'll do separate motions. Okay.
So on 513, solitary confinement was, there's a new directive that was a administrative regulation that is specific to solitary confinement in itself. What you do with those offenders they are not allowed to be on any solitary confinement status for more than 15 days. Every 15 days, they have to be minimally up to every 15th day, they have to be removed from solitary confinement status and seen by a committee. The committee is identified in statute that is a clinician, the housing unit officer, supervisor of the solitary confinement unit, mental health clinician, and a case manager or a case worker for the unit. And they have to go over the reason that the person was put on segregation or solitary confinement, recommendations for removal and placement in future, and if they recommend to be returned to solitary confinement, why, and what their process is or plan to get that individual off and what they need. The only thing in statute that it did allow is to say that if a mental health professional recommends the person not to come off on the 15th day, they can, based upon their evaluation that they may be homicidal or reasons that would be detrimental to them or somebody else based on their mental health condition. But that's all that solitary confinement AR is.
We'd have to fix the definition on that one because you're saying that's inaccurate. But I think there's also a typo on page 2, number 7. I think it means rural camps. It says rural.
It is.
All right.
You're correct.
All right. So, okay.
And thank you for that. Good to move on?
Yes.
Next one is access to care. This is AR 613. And AR 613 is really just it's technical changes. It's changing just for consistency, and the other health regulations is moving the name of inmate to call them offenders. So it's really just definition changes. And if you notice on all of our ARs, the very first part under responsibility, that is a change that is done on every single AR that will be presented in the future. That was made by a recommendation from the Department of Justice based on a lawsuit to make sure that everyone has that is working for the agency does receive these ARs, and that they understand them, and that they have received acknowledgement that they received and understood what they were being directed to. And that's really all that is. But you'll see that in every new AR or AR that gets brought up here in the future. That's all that was done on access to care. Pretty much same thing under AR 614. This is the same thing under classifications for health classification. It was just changes of adding offender to that. Another thing that was changed was just the custody levels of those that are, this is under 61402, under classification committee, that a classification committee involving the clinicians will determine whether or not somebody can meet the needs of someone going into a certain level. This was another issue that was brought up by the Department of Justice, that if we have offenders that we cannot meet their medical or mental health needs in certain classification levels, like an outside camp or minimum security because they don't have nursing or mental health or medical staff there 24/7, or whether medication that they're on provides them to be at a type of an inpatient or closer medical mental health setting, that they cannot be denied those credits for being at a level of minimum or a camp facility if we say that we cannot provide them with the necessary treatment or accommodations that they require under ADA. Those are the only changes on that ADA.
Good.
Next one is the access healthcare for women. And that was the same thing. It's just that responsibility section, and we took out inmate to offender and changed it to offender. Those were the only changes.
So, Director, before we move off of 623, can you explain to the group here that the reason why the new law reference pregnant offenders is not inclusive to this AR?
Yes. So what there is in 292, AB 292, it was the Healthcare for Women bill. It basically has in there that we provide a minimum of 72 hours bonding with any offender that bears child while incarcerated. That will those are being handled by the actual hospital that they're being inpatient with when they're bearing their child. They will remain in that facility for minimally 72 hours so that a bonding process can be prepared and exist before anything is done with the offender or the child. That was a change that was just made this year. Also in the bill also addressed the annual mammograms and pelvic exams for every single offender in the women's facility. Those are all addressed in the medical operational procedures, not in the AR. That's why you don't see them in the AR. That's a medical operation procedure, not an administrative regulation.
And when will we see those?
We've got the new doctor here today who is doing all the new medical operational procedures, and we'll be submitting them to me for review. They don't come in front of the BOPC unless it's requested. So they can, but they just aren't automatic.
That's requested. They're requested.
When would they be available so we can make sure it's agendized?
So a lot of it has the process for those. They go through, the medical makes the recommendations to the operating procedure. They submit it to the director of medical, who puts the final say in it before it goes to the Attorney General's office to make sure it's meeting standards from either litigation that's currently in place or ones that have already passed. From that point, it goes to me for my signature. And then at that point, it's made into procedure. Depends on the complexity of those procedures, but I mean, we could provide updates every time for BOPC if we need to.
And it'd be for information only.
Yes, correct. Okay, that's possible.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on 623? All right, moving on to 819.
All right, the last one on 819 is the Nevada Risk Assessment System. Just a little history of the Nevada Risk Assessment System that came out in 2018. It was a system that was taken from the ORAS, which is the Ohio Risk Assessment System, which was an evidence-based risk assessment system by the University of Cincinnati that was then developed and brought into the Nevada as our utilization of our risk assessment system. And it's not just for Department of Corrections, it's utilized for Department of Parole and Probation as well. So we're all on the same page when we do risk assessment. This AR identifies the process with our risk assessment system and what we do for fidelity. When you talk about evidence-based programs or evidence-based systems like this, if we do not stick with the fidelity of what that program was designed for or what they're telling us and trained us from Ohio, that it will not be effective on what we're looking for. So the PIT, which is our our tool that we utilize for intakes, our pre-intake tool, that was more identified on here on the importance of it and for fidelity of it to follow what Ohio risk assessment system is telling us to do and how that plays a factor in everything throughout the system from day one with offender accountability plans. Offender accountability plans is based on what the risk assessment system is telling us on the needs of what that offender does or needs for whether it's mental health, medical, or programming to make it successful when we get through the reentry process. But that's how we develop our offender accountability plan is day one with the Nevada risk assessment system. Those systems the risk assessment can change. They're in this, that also developed is written in this AR. If there is a change or a recommendation for a change or someone requests a change in the risk assessment system, there is a process that will go in place of why and how that process works, which is why we added it into the AR 819 or readdressed it. That's really all it is.
Question? Anything further?
Nope, that's it.
All right, at this time I will entertain a motion for adopting the administrative regulations specifically for A100, AR 613, AR 614, AR 623, and AR 819.
So moved.
We have a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Secondarily, I will entertain a motion for modification of the administrative regulations of AR 507 and AR 513.
Question before I make the motion?
Yes, sir.
I think, should we be sending this back to you all for redrafting? Is that what you're
that's
asking?
what I'm
Oh, okay. All right. I'll make that motion. We send this back for redrafting.
I said modification.
Yeah, I didn't know what we meant. Okay. All right. Very
Do
good.
you want to repeat the motion?
Yes, I move that we send AR 507 and 513 back for redrafting. Is that okay?
Yes. So, Mr. Newby, can we approve that via email on completion of the corrections, or do we just wait to the next meeting?
My understanding is that upon modification, various administrative regulations are in effect until the next meeting of this board, such that Director Renda can make the appropriate changes to the definition so it's consistent with what his understanding is supposed to be for 507 and 513, and it would be immediately in effect subject to approval by this board at its next scheduled meeting.
Okay.
And it's under what's called a temporary regulation. We have authority to do that immediately.
All right. So we have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And we will close agenda item number 6 and move on to agenda item number 7, public comment. Second period, this period of public comment is for any matter that is within the jurisdiction of the public body. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under the public comment period. The commission will impose a time limit of 3 minutes. Do we have any public comment there in Carson City?
We have one.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Foley, spelled F-O-L-E-Y. I'm a volunteer with Return Strong. Like you, I am a member of the Nevada State Board, and my understanding is that all the Nevada State Boards, maybe with the exception of 1 or 2, have given permission to set up the ability to phone in and make comments or But this one, so far, this committee, your Board of Prison Commissioners has not yet set up the phone call option. And I'm asking if you could expedite that for all future meetings so that the working people of Nevada can be included. Thank you.
One more, Governor.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Nicole Williams for the record. I want to thank the Board of Commissioners and the NDOC for their effort to correct and fix the continued issues and problems that we have been addressing during the public comment for the past couple of years. We clearly do not need Band-Aids. We need to get to the root of these problems. Root cause analysis, realize the problem, gather data, determine causal factors, identify the root cause, recommend and implement solutions. So looking forward to the next board meeting updates and corrective actions that have been taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all for the North, Governor.
Do we have any public comment here in Las Vegas? Please come forward.
Thank you. My name is Crystal Voigt, V as in Victor, O-I-G-H-T. I wanted to say thank you for everything that you've been doing to work on this issue. The two things I'm going to ask for is follow-up and accountability. The pressure point becomes not only what can we do now to limit the bleeding while we work towards long-term solutions, but how do we actually provide a nutritional foundation that'll give people a chance at leaving prison better than they came. Providing more calories of unhealthy food addresses hunger, but not wellness. Providing choice of menu items gives the appearance of choice, but it does no good if we don't include healthy food options. And then serve them items on the approved menu that will never truly solve the problem with prison and food. We will only continue the game of smoke and mirrors. We are asking you to please ensure that we are having open conversations with impacted people and provide true accountability with sustainable solutions. Yes, stop the bleeding, but let's work together to heal the harm that's being caused. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment?
Good morning.
Morning. Afternoon.
My name is Valerie Mays. I took the time off work today to be here to make sure that Director Zarenda and each of you hear from families at High Desert, not just for myself and my situation, because I might not be personally, sorry, I'm a little nervous, be as deeply impacted because of fixability. I have been able to work out with my job, not everyone has this privilege, not everyone lives close enough to get out of work and drive to visits. They have second jobs and husband their jobs and are going to school. They live in other states and countries. I'm not sure if you have ever really stopped to think about it, but for families, what we have in common is we have a loved one that's incarcerated in Nevada, but we come from every walk of life. We live literally all over the world. What we have in common with you is we love our loved ones that are in prison, and we need and want to be able to sit down, look in their eyes and know they are okay, especially under the conditions at High Desert. Sometimes the only times they can leave that darkness and leave the darkness and have every moment to breathe and feel loved and care about and humans. I live in constant fear and worry for my loved one and his safety at High Desert. It is a known problem at NDOC. You recently had someone climb the cage and kill another person. We know the story, but where were the COs? Where are the cameras? Why do we pretend that the only violence is inmate to inmate and not include the culture, fear, and violence that is also portrayed by so many of guards? Ending weekend visitation is equivalent of ending visitations for many families and their loved ones. We aren't stupid. We understand that staffing has been a problem. We are asking you to give us a voice, listen to us, push the date back so that you can take hearing the concerns and considering them and the changes that are coming and finding solutions that actually fall into the value you have talked about, families and strength. Warden Williams' decision could not have happened alone, so we are asking administration to help us or let us help you find solutions that value every family, not just the loved ones with privileges.
My visit with my husband is all he has to look forward to. He is doing his best to program and get home to start a new chapter. Those few hours are lifeline to people who love him and have faith and love waiting for him. They remain him as human and desiring to love, just like every other person that walks in visitor room. Don't take that away from us. Thank you for your time, and I pray you really hear from us. Thank you.
Hello, board. My name is Kalae, K-A-L-A-E, last name Casorso, C-A-S-O-R-S-O. I have a loved one at HDSP. One of the only ways that I can support him aside from sending money is by visiting. Recently, we found out from a memo and the correction officers that our visitation schedules were changing on September 11th. I want to take a minute to explain just how this impacts our family. First, I moved to Las Vegas from Colorado to be here to support my loved one. He has been in prison now nearly 13 years and has only had a handful of visits in that 13 years from his disabled mother, who resides across the country. Along with moving 750 miles to be closer to attend visits on a weekly basis, I changed my work schedule to accommodate the current visiting schedule for my loved one on Friday and Saturday. I work in a corporate environment and need to be available to work Monday through Thursday. Changing my current schedule to accommodate visiting once again is nearly impossible. These changes occurred with very little warning and started as rumors that couldn't be verified. There are so many people that this will cause so many issues for. What about people that have children or live far away? I know of families that come from other countries or drive and travel from other states. I know a family that schedules their visits to come on long weekends and holidays to spend time with their loved one because they don't have vacation time to come across the country for a 3-hour visit. It's a lot to coordinate. And for every one of us that are here today, there are hundreds of families that can't be here to give a 2-minute comment. We know this isn't on the agenda, but we also know that you all choose to press pause and take time to listen to us. How deeply are you going to help or prevent damaging families by these discussions, and also to work with us to help find a workable solution? We are positive they exist. Your Director Zorinda, and our Director, Jody, proved during the legislative session that they can work together and are problem solvers. We know Warden Williams made this decision due to the pressure he is under. We are asking everyone to please stop, listen, and look for a better solution that respects the work and pressure of corrections and the need for our families to stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tina Turrentine, T-U-R-N-T-I-N-E. My loved one is at High Desert. I'll try to make it short. I'm here on behalf of families, including our children. I'm a grandmother, so my grandchildren are impacted. I'm a working mother, grandmother. My husband is at High Desert. We have a total of 19 grandkids, one on the way, 9 children. We are back and forth out of state. His mother has health issues. She's back and forth out of the state. The visiting changes does not work for all of us, not just my household, but several of us. So you're going to consistently hear about this. We've voiced our concerns to sergeants, to lieutenants. So I'm sure it's made its way to Williams and Director Zorinda. So my situation is I work a job. Monday through Friday is my schedule. It's a set schedule. It doesn't have any flexibility for weekends. I operate 2 businesses. So my schedule is minimized to whatever I can squeeze in. The way the visiting was hard to do. I've done it between being a mother, a grandmother, employee, and a business owner. My grandchildren coming in from out of state to visit their grandfather, and this has just started. We've had visitings canceled due to staffing issues. It's a known issue. We are aware of this, and there's got to be a way to change it. The schedule's not going to work for our children.
my grandchildren, it's not going to work for them. They're not going to be able to see their father. My 2 stepchildren live in California. Wednesdays and Thursdays are not going to be an option for them to see their father. He's been incarcerated for 13 years, their whole lives. So the only time that they get to see him is once or twice a year. You guys are going to take that away from him with this change. There's got to be another way. We're not saying that we don't understand the staffing issues. We do, but there has to be a different resolution. And we're just asking to be heard and understood, and at least put it off until there's something that's more beneficial to everyone in the family.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Ahern, AHERN. I have taken the time off work today to urge you to reconsider allowing, High Desert and Warden Williams to eliminate weekend visits. Eliminating weekend visits will not allow families to support one another financially and mentally. Due to this change, many couples, parents, siblings, and friends will not be able to see each other on a regular basis and have a conversation longer than the 15-minute phone calls. Young children have a hard time connecting with their incarcerated loved ones as it is. This new schedule would drastically limit, if not eliminate, options for school-aged children and children with a working parent to visit their family members. If we don't stop this, it is becoming a state-sponsored version of parental estrangement. I know it might sound dramatic, but it is that serious. Additionally, this new visitation schedule would impact families' ability to continue to work and attend visitations on a regular basis and keep that connection that cannot be maintained without seeing eye to eye in person. Many others and I have already altered our work schedules to attend visitation on the previous schedule, and we would need to request changes again with limited notice to adjust to this change. We are already struggling to financially support our families without our loved ones, and now would be required to take time off work or request changes again to attend visits and continue to maintain the important family bonds that are built in the visiting room. Please support families and help us stop the implementation of the proposed change. We are not saying things have to be exactly the same that they were, but we want a voice in finding solutions that will work for all families, your constituents, our communities. Eventually, most people will come home. Don't make them come home to strangers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other further comment?
We do a couple more. Hello, my name is Sarah Clark, CLARK, and my husband and I are members of Return Strong, and I'm here today to support families at High Desert and the plan to cancel weekend visits. While I may not be directly impacted by this change, I'm standing in solidarity with them because I can't stop thinking about the what if. What if that was implemented at Southern Desert? Our family would be devastated. First, we only get Sunday visits as it is, but my job isn't flexible, just like many other families. And usually the families that don't have flexibility are also the families that are working low-wage jobs just to survive rent and food and daycare and healthcare. Our survival outside of prison without our loved ones' financial help. Then we also take care of our loved ones as best as we can. Now, in order to do that, decisions by the state will separate us even further. I work full-time and I'm only able to visit for a few hours on Sundays. Then I have to leave and go to work just to survive. If this happened at Southern Desert or if he was moved to High Desert, it would end all possibility of our family being able to spend time together at all. What would you do if it was your husband or wife or child? How hard would you fight to make sure you protect that time you have? Attorney General Ford, I see you on social media with your kids and how proud you are of them. God forbid they made a mistake and end up in prison. How hard would you fight to protect your only opportunities to see them, to love them? All of you at this table are family men, and we are family women, and we will fight too. Thank you.
Thank you. Jody.
So just real quick, I just want to bring an issue up that it's been on my heart since it happened. I had a friend, his name was Isaiah Sharp. He was killed by his cellie, even though his cellie previously to that was single celled and kept riding kites. Do not put someone in my cell. I don't want nobody in my cell. If you put someone in here, I will kill him. Going on for a couple months, and they still put my friend in that cell, even though they had proper warning, but they just neglected it. So my issue is with the classification of how you do it. Because you put a young, I'm not going to say he was a good kid. So yes, he was a very good-hearted kid, and you put him in a cell with somebody who was in there not only for murder, but is telling you he's going to kill the person you put in here, not to put anybody in here. And so that's my issue I just want to bring up. I'm pretty confident you guys have heard about it. You know what I'm saying? It happened at, I believe, the start of 2021. I forgot, but that's just my issue I wanted to bring and address because it was a good person. He was supposed to get out, I think, 3 weeks after that happened. He was scheduled to get out. This was like the day before his birthday. And I just want to bring that up and stuff.
Mr. Oleska, can you state your name for the record again?
Oh, Robert Basta, ABA, STA.
Okay. How you doing? My name is Vivian Jones, Jones. I just wanted to make a statement that we fought really hard to get the visiting going. I spoke on a bill, the SB 351, for ex-felons to be able to see their loved ones. My son was incarcerated for 20 years, and I wasn't able to see him for 20 years since he was 16. Now he's 36. And to take away the weekend visits would be very difficult with family members that have children, that you take them out of school so they can come to a visit. So once again, we're just here to bring awareness how that can affect families, not just our children, but everybody that's in DOC. So we want to just remember that we fought hard to change that law. So we just need to stick with it a little bit, okay? I'm simple.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sometimes.
My name is Jody Hockman, JODIHOCKING, and bringing something today to the second public comment period. It's not on the agenda anywhere, which is, I understand, but it's concerning. And I also understand that the people that are in this room right now do not have the power or authority at this moment to do anything about it. But we go by Return Strong, the uproar. The uproar is a loud, impassioned cry to raise the voices of people that don't have a voice for themselves. Today, I want to raise the voice of Christian Walker, who died in the NDOC custody on April 15th. About a week ago, we actually personally knew Christian, so this is not somebody that we know from letters, but somebody who we know the family, we sit with them on a regular basis to try to help her through this. Yesterday, we were able to see pictures of Christian post-death, as we say, post-murder. And the coroner's report says that Christian died of natural causes of high blood pressure, but with a normal heart. There was no damage to his heart. When we saw these pictures, we've been waiting since April. When we saw the pictures, his eye socket was broken and his eye was hanging out. His face was broken and so swollen that it verified what the first responder had originally told us back in April, that when they looked at him, he was not recognizable as a human. He had been beaten so badly. He had bruises and black and blue marks that match what looks like a baton on his face and his entire back.
The inside of his lips are bruised. His eyes were black and blue. His ears were bruised. He had defensive wounds on his hands. It's clear when you look at this, this was not he didn't die of natural causes. And so I want it on the record, on public record, that we are going to fight. When we started this organization, we always have said, started during COVID, and we've always said, we always have a choice to either do something or do nothing when you're faced with injustice. I will take my last breath fighting for Christian Walker, and this is a tiny sample of the people that will show up too. We are begging you to make sure that who is responsible for his death is punished. If we are going to be tough on crime and we're going to punish people from the street, from wherever, for whatever their murders or felony murder one, the rules have to apply to everybody.
Thank you.
Sonia Williams, for the record, we briefly talked about the audit, so youth supports audit. And I just have just a couple questions to think about. Like, you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on body cams, you know, and then paid license fees. You guys paid license fees every year. My question is, if those body cams were on the poor officers that Christian to death, would he be alive today? The audit also addresses weapons that are unauthorized but are still in the arsenal years after they have been removed. If the officers that murdered Christian had gotten a hold of them, would they have just shot him instead of beating him to death? It's rumored that the corrections officers are stating that they are not trained in de-escalation. Do they need to be trained not to beat somebody to death? Do your proposals in response to the youth supports audit include citizen review boards of all in-custody deaths involving force? If not, it needs to, and we are demanding it be added. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will close the second opportunity for public comment and move to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Participate.